U-C-H?
Correct!
I am the smartest man alive!
Judd Apatow's life could not have started farther away from seeing himself rise up the ranks to becoming one of the most powerful people in the history of Hollywood. Born in Queens but eventually relocating to Syosset on Long Island in New York, Apatow was very estranged from the Hollywood world he would come to dominate. His parents divorced when he was 12 and Apatow mainly lived with his father, but it was in one faithful summer visiting his mother that his passionate obsession that would drive the rest of his life was born. Apatow's mother worked in a comedy club for a summer, and young Judd received his first experience seeing live comedy while his mom worked to pay bills. The spark was lit and young Judd became obsessed with all things comedy, digesting as much stand-up as he could while also finding deep passions for comedy, films, and television shows. He even went so far as to start his own radio show at his high school that was mainly dedicated for him to interview comedians who were either coming up or had already made a name for themselves whom he admired. This was famously the basis of his first book, which came out a few years back, Sick in the Head, which was comprised of both interviews he did with comedians who were on their way up while he was in high school, like Jerry Seinfeld, Tim Allen, and Gary Shadling, as well as modern interviews done in the same format with current comics. Apatow very openly and earnestly speaks about what he considers to be his almost unhealthy obsession with the comedy art form and how he had fully immersed himself in the process and the world of comedy to deal with the divorce of his parents and the regular old suckiness of being a teenager who wanted something bigger out of their life. Naturally, given his obsession and desire, Apatow desired to be a comedian himself and set out and try to make a name for himself. Apatow started performing stand-up as a senior in high school at only 17, and after graduating high school, he moved to Los Angeles and enrolled in USC's screenwriting program. His obsession for comedy continued to be nurtured by the LA scene, with him now able to attend shows and trying to cut his teeth on his own at the world-renowned comedy clubs of LA, such as the Improv. Apatow found a quick home in LA and started to make a great deal of friends who would ultimately benefit from his desire and work ethic to be great at his craft.
You know, everybody's having a good time but you.
Spoiled snot. Get out of here.
Apatow continued to work in comedy in whatever capacity he could while taking hosting gigs at comedy clubs, and eventually dropped out of USC in his sophomore year and moved in with friend and future fellow slacker Adam Sandler. As he continued his career trying to make it as a comedian himself, Apatow was introduced to a prolific actor and comedian, Gary Shadling, in the early 90s and was hired by Shadling to write for him in the 1991 Grammy Awards that were hosted by Shadling. Continue to work the scene, Apatow kept busy producing comedy sessions for Tom Arnold, Roseanne Barr, and Jim Carrey before he got his biggest break to date. Apatow helped to co-create and produce The Ben Stiller Show alongside, you guessed it, Ben Stiller. After receiving a strong following and even winning an Emmy Award for his work and the work of the writing staff, Fox decided to cancel the show and not move forward with any more seasons. A huge heartbreak, but one that would fortunately serve Apatow well to get used to. After the end of the Ben Stiller Show, Apatow looked back up and took an opportunity to join the Larry Sanders Show, starring previously collaborator Gary Shadling. As would be shown in some of his later work, Apatow credits his time working as a producer on the show, and Shadling himself with helping Apatow find his voice as a writer by focusing on more character-centered narratives.
Yeah, I'm starving!
Far from the everyday world, there is a place where big...
Congratulations, Mr. Sims. You are the fattest boy in camp.
While working on the show with Shadeling for the full run of 1998, Apatow stayed busy beginning to carve out a niche for himself in the film side of the business. Finding his first success in the name of the film marquee by writing film Heavyweights with Steve Brill that starred Ben Stiller, he also got himself an uncredited rewrite of the 1996 Jim Carrey and Matthew Broderick film The Cable Guy, which received mixed reviews at the time, but is well regarded as a cult film that was misunderstood in its day for having much darker tone than the Jim Carrey's films most people were used to. A good portion of his hindsight in the influence of Apatow's script, which took much more complex and troubled look at Carrey's career, The Cable Guy was a pivotal moment in his life, not only for his career, but only for his personal life, as Apatow met Leslie Mann, a co-star in the film on set, and the two began dating. They would eventually get and stay married and have 2 daughters who are also now making their way into the industry. Apatow continued doing uncredited script work on other 90s comedy hits like Liar Liar, Happily Gilmore, and The Wedding Singer. This desire and hunger that was with him since his childhood to continue to do as much as he could even without receiving the praise truly is the key to what helped him have the illustrious career he was able to eventually capture. After already having some would consider a very busy career, Apatow pivoted next to trying his hand in television again. He went out and made a pilot titled Sick in the Head, which starred David Krumholtz and Amy Poehler, about a psychiatrist on his first day on the job. The show was ultimately not picked up by the network, but did open him up to join another project that caught his passion, Freaks and Geeks. An idea originally conceived by freaking collaborator, fellow venerable producer, writer, director Paul Feig. Apatow joined the show as an executive producer and wrote and directed a good number of episodes of the cult classic that only lasted 1 season. Like most of Apatow's early work, the show was ahead of its time and found a small but incredible loyal following, with most people crediting for his hyper-realistic look at real teenage life as opposed to the glorified and glamorized version usually shown on network TV. Freaks was way more focused on bringing comedy and real-life drama to the small screen and has since found an incendiary audience in the streaming era. After the cancellation of Freaks and Geeks, Apatow leaned into the concept of looking at real people in our youth institutions by creating Undeclared, a spiritual sequel to Freaks and Geeks that was about another random group of people trying to find their way through their freshman year of college. Both these shows would find beginnings of Apatow's fortress relationships with many actors that he'll go back to work with in his future projects like Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, Jay Baruchel, Carlo Gallo, and James Franco. Undeclared would unfortunately meet the same demise as Freaks and was canceled as well after 1 season.
"60% of the time, it works every time."
That doesn't make sense.
Surely after so many stops and starts after facing a crushing amount of rejections, Apatow would pack his bags and head for a different life, as surely this line of work was not meant to be. While it would be certainly understandable if he had taken this route, Apatow instead rededicated himself and turned his eye again back to the film side of the business and transformed himself into the most prolific and successful people in the history of Hollywood. Switching gears from his failed TV projects, Apatow joined forces with the fresh-off SNL dynamic duo Adam McKay and Will Ferrell to create one of Ferrell's first film acting vehicles that turned him into a bona fide star, Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy. With Ferrell in the iconic role of the politically incorrect but an insanely hilarious San Diego newscaster, the team struck absolute comedy gold. Anchorman became a hit seemingly overnight and helped launch all three into the limelight.
Name to McLovin? McLovin? What kind of a stupid name is that, Fogel? What, are you trying to be an Irish R&B singer?
Apatow included for his role as producer on the film. Finally, with a legit bona fide hit on his hands, in his eyes of both critics and the audience, Apatow soon found himself in high demand. His next project was the raunchy but heartfelt comedy The 40-Year-Old Virgin that he co-wrote with and starred Steve Carell, who at the time was only a season into The Office. The film also saw Apatow make his feature film directorial debut, getting a chance to flex another muscle he had been working on for years. The 40-Year-Old Virgin became another success and opened even more doors for Apatow, who finally getting the recognition he deserved after all these years grinding away. The film helped cement Apatow as a legit bona fide writer, director, and producer. Apatow's next project was 2007's Knocked Up, starring Seth Rogen and Katherine Heigl, where following up his formula from the 40-Year-Old Virgin, he again controlled the reins as the writer, director, and producer of the film. The film is also as significant as to date. Rogen had been featured in all of Apatow's works as more of a side and secondary character, but Knocked Up features him in his first role as a bona fide leading man. A talented Apatow saw him once upon a time, and one that finally came to fruition in the movie. Over the next few years, Apatow continued keeping busy by working on screenplays and helping produce such comedy as Superbad, Walk Hard, The Julie Cox Story, You Don't Mess with Zohan, Pineapple Express. His credits alone just as producer are insane when looking at an overview of his career. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Step Brothers, Get Him to the Greek, Bridesmaids, Wanderlust, Year One, The 5-Year Engagement, Begin Again, Anchorman 2, Pee-wee's Big Holiday, Juliet Naked, Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping, The Big Sick, and the upcoming 2002 feature Bros.
I like having a girlfriend. I don't have one, but I like it better. One night stands are tough, and I'm not great at sex, so at the end of every time I gotta look at them and go, hey, normally I do better than that.
After an incredible successful run in the films listed above that mainly feature younger, more immature characters trying and failing to become full-on adults, Apatow next leaned into a more introspective and thoughtful area for his career with the necessary powers that be behind him after proving he can turn out hits. Apatow made the wildly different in-tone Funny People in 2009, a complicated film that inspires to truly mix the different genres of comedy and drama. Apatow's film that he wrote, directed, and produced features Adam Sandler in a seemingly almost autobiographical role as an Asian comedian who learns he has a terminal illness. Seth Rogen co-stars as a young up-and-coming comedian hired to write jokes for Sandler's character. Receiving mixed reviews at the time, I personally think it stands out as one of Apatow's finer works. He has the ability and masterfully crafts a film about the world he knows and has a lot to say about the process of aging and reflecting on a life lived. The film goes deep beneath the surface in evaluating decisions we make in the name of notoriety and has strong themes of family love, with Apatow really putting his bleeding heart on screen. Even more intentionally and ironically, his real-life wife, Leslie Mom, and his young daughters Maud and Iris are also featured in the film. The 2010s would really become this introspective and heavier period in Apatow's career as he tried to find a way to balance his comedy with more dramatic elements of life. Coming in the next form of This Is 40, which features Leslie Mann and Paul Rudd reprising their roles from Knocked Up, as a married couple going through it with 2 young kids on the eve of both their 40th birthday parties. Definitely different from the more raunchy comedy tours of his earlier work, the film stands out as seemingly an ode to one of Apatow's heroes, John Cassavetes. Cassavetes made a name for himself as one of the original pioneers of independent filmmaking in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and was famous for using frequent collaborators as actors, most notably Gina Rowlands, his wife. Apatow is really most aspiring to be Cassavetes in the film by again casting Mon and having Paul Rudd stand in the pseudo Judd as Pete in the film. So much of the film's content revolves around the difficulty of the couple's marriage, and the story and the camera remain embedded in their house, almost studying and recreating actual conversations between Apatow and Maud. Keeping with his theme of collaborating with hot comedy stars at the moment, Apatow's next joined forces with Amy Schumer on 2015's Trainwreck. As director and producer, Schumer received praise in the film as her chops as comedy actress and for depth of the script she wrote. Apatow repeated the same formula with 2020's The King of Staten Island with Pete Davidson. Both films, while containing very different content and characters, are the same ilk that Apatow aspires to make. He follows this formula of writing, encouraging fellow writers and comedians to write what comes from the heart.
Being the uptight girl, I hate it. I will be your crack spirit guide.
Why I ask this question, I don't know, as he has only proven himself over the years to be addicted to every aspect of the process and shows no signs of slowing down. Over the past decade, he has tried his hand at writing a book, See Sick in the Head, and its sequel, which just came out, Sicker in the Head. He has made his return to TV, well, the style of TV anyway, with the HBO show Girls and the quaint but charming Love on Netflix. Apatow has also reached deep in his bag and even returned to the stage for a comedy special in 2017, the same year which also saw him produce the Academy-nominated The Big Sick. He remained incredibly busy during the pandemic, releasing the 2022 comedy The Bubble on Netflix a few months ago. His most interesting move in the past decade to me, however, has been his turn at producing and directing documentaries, first scratching the itch with 2017's May It Last, a portrait of the Avett brothers. Apatow got his first taste of the nonfiction by creating the resulting documentary about making the band's album True Sadness. His next documentary was 2018, The Zen Diaries of Gary Shalding, a tribute to his idol and collaborator, who helped him get his start way back when. His most recent production just debuted on HBO Max in a two-part documentary about the life and career of legendary stand-up comedian George Carlin called George Carlin's American Dream. While I apologize as I'm most certainly missing a number of titles Apatow has either produced or directed, whether it be television shows, stand-up specials, or films, the important thing to highlight is how appreciative Apatow is. In an industry that is rife with corruption and evil and aggressive maniacs, Apatow has become a unicorn in a sense that he was able to make it through the fray by keeping himself completely intact without losing who he is at his core. Whereas so many people sell out for opportunities or don't play nice with others, Apatow is a legit dude who made it and kept himself together along the way. I was lucky enough to hear him speak once in a sit-down interview when I was in college, and he really drove that point home. I believe he has been able to achieve his success because he genuinely and legitimately believes in the theme of everything he writes. It is almost his religion or his mantra to write out all the good and positives he can spin about his thoughts and feelings about the world and find the way to make the not so great elements of our lives funny. It is rare to be able to connect with such a wide-ranging audience across so many different decades, but Apatow has certainly found his place at the most influential comedy mind of our generation. I'm tremendously appreciative for his body of work and the example he has laid for making it as one of the good guys in Hollywood.